Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons, and we're going to talk about a layer that is encountered by a Dragon Master when they sit at the table to play Dungeons & Dragons, and how the concept of game, the concept of Dungeons & Dragons being a game, is encountered layers and layers and layers and layers down by Dragon Masters. And I want to talk about this, what they encounter first when they sit down at the Dungeons & Dragons table. All right, so previously I had discussed when you sit down at the Dungeons & Dragons table, the Dragon Master, when I say Dragon Master, I mean Dungeons & Dragons player, okay? The person who has a player character. There's 5 of them at the table, all right? So when a Dragon Master sits at the table and the Dungeon Master starts talking, or right before the Dungeon Master starts talking, they are going to encounter history. Dungeons & Dragons has 5 decades of history. It is literally world famous, right? It's like OJ, like everybody knows, right? Like they couldn't find, it was extremely difficult to find jurors who were not aware. Same thing about Dungeons & Dragons. Everybody knows about Dungeons & Dragons, right? They don't know everything about it. They probably don't have half the facts wrong, but they certainly have heard those words before, okay? It's extensive, right? What do they hit next? All right, so first they hit history. What do they hit after that? Reputation, right? Reputation. So what is Dungeons & Dragons' reputation, right? Well, there's a great musical called Matilda, and it talks about being a little bit naughty. And that is what Dungeons & Dragons is, right? Like, it's got some edges to it, right? So we already talked about history. I'm not going to repeat that, right? So let's talk about what some of the sharp edges on Dungeons & Dragons are. The occult. Woo! Yeah, let's get into it. So there are people who believe that Dungeons & Dragons is connected to the occult. They are 100% not wrong. Dungeons & Dragons is absolutely impacted by the occult. It is part of its reputation. And you're like, oh, Scott, that was decades ago. No, man, it's like a month ago. It's like 2 months ago. You know what Dungeons & Dragons just released in 2023? Yeah, it was in 2023. I think it was late. No, I'm sorry. Oh, it was this year, 2024. Book of Many Things. I'm not kidding. It has a tarot deck in it, and it says, this is how you use this to do divination. Not a joke. Go get the thing. Don't go get the thing. Not a joke. 2 months ago, Dungeons & Dragons was like, here's a tarot deck. Here's how you use it for divination. What? Wait, what? It was like, I was shocked. And by the way, I bought that thing, and I was like, this isn't, this is just for making some adventures, blah, 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 right? It's like, nope, this is used for divination. Here's how you do it, right? And I was like, what? It was like, I was shocked, right? So reputation connected to the occult, right? Yeah, you're like, now, should that, scare you off and you're done with Dungeons & Dragons forever? Absolutely not, right? And the reason why is anything valuable has a sharp edge. Professional sports, right? They struggle. They very much struggle. They have 15 different sharp edges where you're like, are people dying because of this? And you're like, yeah, there's 3 things on every pro sport where people have definitely died from from XYZ, right? So everything that's cool has a legacy and has momentum, and it has sharp edges, right? So don't be afraid of it, just be aware of it. So one, Dungeons & Dragons has a reputation of being connected to the occult. And it is. There's no 2 ways about it, right? And that doesn't mean you need to be casting witchcraft spells tomorrow, but it absolutely means you should be aware of what you're dealing with, right? Okay, so yeah. Next, bleed, right? What is the reputation of Dungeons & Dragons? From way back, right? People were like, wait a second. Okay, so I'm in the real world and I'm me, but you're saying that I'm going to be in the realm of Dungeons & Dragons, and there I'm not me. I'm somebody else? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, and you want me to invest myself in this other identity? Yes, as much as possible. How deep? As deep as you can. You're like, play for years, and, you know, like, adopt a new cadence, adopt a new way of thinking, adopt a new way of feeling, adopt a new way of talking. What if I fall in love with my own second identity? What if I like some of the parts of the identity I've built in Dungeons & Dragons better than myself? Oh, well, maybe you could just adopt those parts. If you like the way your character talks, maybe you just talk that way. If your character's more confident, but you're not confident, maybe you just take that. Well, wait a second. Where do I end and my characters begin? And my character begins. Where do I begin? Where does my character end? And increasingly, the question, we now have a term for it. We literally have a term for it, which is called bleed, right? The idea that you may not be able to tell where you begin and your character ends. That's a reputation. It is a reputation, right? The other thing is it has a reputation for hyper-intellectualism, right? And they're not wrong, right? Like, once you become a dragon master or a dungeon master, in order to build the worlds that are beyond you, in order to build limitless worlds, there is nothing beyond your purview, nothing beyond your interest. And Dungeons & Dragons marinates human beings in hyper-intellectualism. It's part of its reputation, right? It has a reputation for complexity. That reputation is 100% true. Nothing about Dungeons & Dragons is simple. The ante to play the simplest version of Dungeons & Dragons is 750 pages of reading. And it is not uncommon for many dungeon masters and many dragon masters to read 5, 10, 20,000 pages of canon during their life, all connected to Dungeons & Dragons. And that's just pure D&D canon. That doesn't even count the multiple libraries you will build to understand botany, stealth, anatomy, medieval weapons, warfare, like a whole bunch of stuff, right? So it has a reputation for the occult. It has a reputation for bleed. It has a reputation for intellectualism. It has a reputation for complexity. And all of it is true, right? And Dungeons & Dragons is the bad boy, right? Like, Dungeons & Dragons is the person with the leather jacket. Dungeons & Dragons is the one your mom warned you about. And in the 80s, that was quite literally your mother, you know, Mothers Against Dungeons & Dragons. Dungeons & Dragons has a reputation, right? And when a dragon master rolls up to the table, first they encounter history, then they encounter reputation, right? We're not even close to the game part, right? When do people realize that Dungeons & Dragons is a game? It's layers and layers and layers and layers and layers deep, right? And so, one, I appreciate your patience. Let me share these layers with you. I want to explore every layer. I want to go as deep as we can get until we get down to this facade, the game facade, right? So thank you for your patience, and thank you very much for letting me share that with you. Please consider liking and subscribing. Oh, actually, every single word you just heard is my humble opinion. Absolutely nothing more, absolutely nothing less. What's important is when I hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.